The next presentation is going to be Leslie Nobile, who will give the Global Registry Knowledge presentation.
Good morning, everyone. This should be fairly quick. I am a department of one, so I only have 5 slides. Doing a lot of work, though, just to put it out there. My title is Senior Director of Global Registry Knowledge, and it's not very clear what that actually means, so I'm going to tell you just a little bit about what this role involves. So as John mentioned, we are 5 regional internet registries, but we actually run one global registry. So that is sort of my focus. I'm looking at data accuracy, quality, and integrity across the global registry system, and we'll be developing and overseeing an ongoing program to assess this, this data quality. And the follow-up to that will be providing strategic and tactical advice to the CEO regarding improvements to ARIN's own internal registry systems. So just a quick overview of my work. This is sort of all the components of what I'll be doing. The top one is the projects. I select 3 to 4 projects each year that I focus on, and they're aimed at examining the integrity of the global registry system. So I will research, document, analyze, and then make recommendations for ARIN's process improvements. And once the project itself gets into Nate's hands, for the most part, to get onto the strategic plan, I will then do some follow-up project management once, to make sure that the project and my recommendations and our recommendations go forward. I represent ARIN in discussions of registry data quality globally. I do a lot of external relations and a lot of public speaking, and I'm asked to talk about this in various places from some really interesting people. Just recently, Interpol contacted me, Europol contacted me, so it's not just within ARIN that we're talking about this. I am to develop and maintain educational materials that identify commonality and differences in registry accuracy practices. And I do act as ARIN's liaison to the global law enforcement community on issues concerning data accuracy and cybercrime. I am working with Bobby Flame. Recently, we have decided to revive the ARIN Government Working Group. So we had our first meeting in D.C. at Steve's lovely office a few weeks ago, and we had over 20 people in attendance, and it's law enforcement and regulators, and it was really interesting. It's a lot of information sharing and education for the most part. And from that meeting, I received a couple of invitations to go speak at individual organizations to talk about some of the work that we're doing. Additionally, in this area, we have something called the Public Safety Working Group, and that is part of the Governmental Advisory Committee of ICANN, the GAC, and that consists of law enforcement and regulators, and they're very interested in working with the 5 RARs, the NRO, on who is accuracy practices, with the ultimate goal of perhaps putting together a globally coordinated policy across the 5 RARs that addresses who is accuracy. And then I participate and support ARIN's outreach efforts. I do lots of backup presentations and speaking, and ARIN on the roads and NANOG on the roads, and lots of stuff like that. So real quickly, just to look at the 2015 projects that I did, we've mentioned a few of them. So I review, analyze, and recommend process improvements within ARIN. The first one was CKN 23, very complicated. This one, yay, you lucky services working group people get to review this one. I did the whole history, all the issues, and the recommendations. So they'll take that from there, and we'll see what happens. You've heard about our POC validation process enhancements. That was a big project, and most of those are going forward now or have been implemented already. I was asked to talk about legacy assignment practices in each of the RARs. So that was one of my global projects, and I worked with all 4 of my colleagues at the other RARs, and to document how they define legacy and what services essentially that they offer to their legacy customers. So that's a document I would hope to be made public on the NRO website at some point, because it is all public information and it would go a long way toward transparency. And then I wrote some coordination procedures for the 5 RARs that we can use during inter-RAR transfers and upon receipt of new IANA IPv4 blocks. There's a lot of coordination that has to happen, particularly in the DNS area. So that has been written and circulated amongst my colleagues, and I'm hoping to get some feedback from them. So my 2016 projects, these are some of the things I'll be working on in addition to that sort of day-to-day stuff. But the top one is my big one. This is sort of my main purpose in life. It's all about WHOIS accuracy practices and requirements across the global registry system. So I'm working closely with my RIR colleagues. I've been to 2 of their offices already and spent a couple of days going over all of their WHOIS accuracy practices. How does data get into the database? How do they maintain data? What are they doing? You heard Andrea from RIPE talk about the ARC, their assisted registry check. So these are all the kinds of things that I'll be examining in this paper. And then I'll make recommendations for improvements to ARIN's own internal vetting and data maintenance processes based on that. And this document will be shared amongst the 5 RIRs. I am going to research and analyze IPv6, ARIN's own IPv6 reassignment policy for compliance and any implications. You know, with IPv4, the requirement is you have to put all your reassignments into the database in order to get additional space. Well, there's the same requirement in IPv6, except that no one's coming back for additional IPv6 address space, so we're really not examining whether they're putting their reassignments in. So I did a quick check, and there are thousands of IPv6 reassignments in the database, which is great. I don't have data right now, but I will. So we're going to look at what the percentages are. Are people actually complying with this policy, and if not, what can we do about that? And one of the reasons behind this is law enforcement has really been very concerned that they're not going to be able to see and find the persons that they are looking for if there's no reassignment information being put in the database. I'm going to do some more work in the inter-RIR transfer processes. There's a few new aspects we need to examine, including RPKI implications. The engineering coordination group has been working on that, but I'd like to add it to this document. And additionally, there's a couple more RIRs that are going to have inter-RIR transfer policies, so I'd like to make sure everybody's accounted for in that document. And finally, I am going to do a little more work on ARIN's POC validation process, and this is more from a policy compliance perspective. We've already got the enhancements going and hope that we get some better response and data. But the policy says that after 60 days, ARIN staff will, if ARIN staff determines that a POC is permanently unavailable or that just doesn't exist, that they'll then mark their record as not validated. And actually, ARIN staff has not really been able to do that part of it fully. We don't have the resources to go search down POCs who may or may not be available. So I'm going to look at that and see if there's anything else we can do from a policy compliance perspective. And that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Questions for Leslie?
Hi, Leslie.
Hey, Louis.
Louis D. Google Fiber, I almost said my previous employer, and also chair of the ASO Address Council. Last slide, please. The projects. So for your WHOIS accuracy practices and requirements, I suspect you're going to see the term accuracy interpreted slightly differently across the different regions. Say, for instance, RIPE, if their WHOIS database also has an IRR attached, they may claim there's an operational accuracy in that there's an IRR entry, which may be a valid or not valid claim. I'm not going to put any judgment on that. But you may also want to define what you what you see as accuracy, and maybe even address what others might think is accuracy.
Yes, that's a really good point, and I will do that for sure.
Okay.
Thank you. Hey, Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Dole, ARIN AC. Two points. One about the inter-RIR transfer process. Yesterday there was discussion that APNIC and RIPE are going to do ASN transfers. When that came up in this region, there was discussion that there are technical issues that we have to deal with regard to that. Is that on your list here, or is that something else?
So back when we said there were technical issues, we said If we want to do an ASN transfer, then there will be, it's not automatic. We have to do work to make it happen. That's not to say we can't overcome that work, but we would need policy to direct that it's necessary to do.
Is that work being done between RIPE and APNIC, or is this issue being swept under the rug? That's, I guess, the other question.
Someone from APNIC behind you, maybe he has something to say.
Well, maybe not. Adam Gosling from APNIC. I did promise, I think it was yesterday, that I would look into how many transfers we've had. Since the policy was implemented, we've had 70 ASN transfers, none of which were interregional transfers.
Ah.
So we actually haven't tried it yet.
Okay, interesting.
Work to be done.
Work to be done.
Not insurmountable, but work to be done.
And Andrew, if you have some suggestions or you want to send me an email about this as a reminder, I will consider that when you.
Yeah. And the last was a number of people talked about transfer data reporting requirements to be similar between regions.
Absolutely.
Is that something on your plate that you're coordinating with other RARs?
Yes, we are working with the RIRs. In fact, the Registration Services Coordination Group and the Engineering Coordination Group will be meeting, and we're going to discuss consolidated transfer statistics. So the RS managers, they're going to give the operational input to the ECG, and they'll make it happen. We're going to tell them what's important to show for the transfer data, and they're going to make it happen in a similar format. So yes, that is absolutely on the plate.
Thanks.
Okay. Oh, Vint.
So, Leslie, you mentioned accuracy, but I was also listening for the word access. During my time at ICANN, there was enormous debate over who should have access to what portions of the WHOIS database and under what conditions. Law enforcement wanted more, people who were concerned about privacy wanted less. I wondered whether that is an issue arising for you, either here in the U.S. or now that you're dealing with potentially international law enforcement organizations, that could be an issue as well, more broadly.
So I can actually jump on that one. Well, Leslie's work doesn't directly germane to that. There is an active project right now to discuss RDAP. And RDAP, the protocol work going on between the RIRs and the IETF and some of the other registries, the name registries, looking at the RDAP protocol. RDAP provides for controlled access to resources, including different visibility views if desired.
Yep. I think the
Do
person
you
in the
want to
back
respond
mic.
on that?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
David Farmer, University of Minnesota. I interpreted Vince's question slightly differently, and you answered sort of technical control of access. I thought he was asking a practice question. Is there any difference in the RIRs on practice of what's accessible under what conditions?
I guess.
That's a friendly amendment. I'll accept that.
Right, okay. A friendly amendment. Okay, so anyway, that's not part of Leslie's work right now to assess that, but we'll talk about whether or not we should add that. Thanks.
Great.
Question in the back.
Gary Campbell, Government of Jamaica. Leslie, you mentioned that a part of your work is to assess the registry data quality. Can you just speak to some of the metrics that you use to do so?
Right now, it's really specifically focused on the projects that I've mentioned. So it's bits and pieces and components that we're working on, but there's not one overall system that I'm working on at this point. The closest I'm coming is the WHOIS accuracy practices and requirements, and that really involves documenting all of the work that each of the RIRs do in order to maintain their accurate data. Do you want to help me maybe with metrics? I'm not sure what.
In terms of metrics for accuracy,
How accurate or inaccurate?
Yeah.
Okay, so one question would be is if you're going through and doing any kind of validation of the entries in the database, does anybody keep track of how many times the entries turned out not to be
That's
accurate?
interesting.
I mean, that's a metric of 25% of the time these things turn out not to be accurate and
Right.
require help. I don't know, it's just an example.
That's a good
got it.
thought, actually.
So presently, what we're trying to do is we're looking at the processes and procedures that the RIRs are using and how they're different, how we're using terms like accuracy, and how that might be different between the regions. Leslie's not doing audits, so she's not in the situation of here's the records before, here's the records after, and 33% were inaccurate. we're trying to figure out how we're using the terminology different between the regions. In terms of assessing accuracy, I don't know. Right now, the closest I would think is when RIPE does its assisted review, they may have metrics
They do.
of before and after state. I know they have metrics regarding records changed. We don't presently have the equivalent of an assisted review project, so we don't have the ISP before we dealt with them and the ISP after,
Correct.
and the difference in records.
Correct.
If we do such a project, yeah, I believe that would be a good metric to have. But it's very difficult to develop metrics regarding accuracy because, by definition, in the RIR, we're looking only at the final result. When someone updates it, it could have been accurate before, and it can be accurate now. It's just the data changed. We don't know it was a change because it was inaccurate. Any other questions for Leslie?
Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.